Welcome once again to Art and Activism Episode 1, The Art of Playing in the Rain with Christina Bertea. I'm Crystal and I am the Weed website manager. And we're so happy to be here with you all. Again, we'll be doing an episode 2 in January with board member Kate on it's called Trash Talk. And also, the format of this is that the presentation will be given by Christina, and then at the end, we'll have about 10 minutes for questions. So save your questions until the end. And also a plug, we're looking for 2 more board members, Weed board members, someone who is interested in working on the website and someone who would like to work on exhibitions. So let us know if you're interested in that too. Thanks for coming. And go ahead, Christina, take it away.
Okay. Well, we're excited about this new web series because Weed believes, and I certainly believe, that artists play a really important role in society of modeling changes, beneficial changes, and inviting people to participate by making it just irresistible. And so here, I love this quote here: art is not a mirror held up to reality, but a hammer with which to shape it. So we're going to be looking at a lot of work by artists who are shaping reality by doing really dramatic stormwater interventions and by playing with rain. So full disclosure, my purpose of doing this playing with the rain is that he's so inspired you'll just want to get up and go out and play. Oh, and let me just say, this young woman is painting. This is quite a large tank, and she's painting it with flowers that are related to bees, and that's a honeycomb in the middle. So she's really, oftentimes people paint tanks to be educational. So why should we harvest rainwater? Well, there are excellent reasons. The first one is just to have emergency water on hand for water security. We really are vulnerable having centralized systems, particularly in an earthquake country, or where, some entity could interfere in some way that we can't even imagine. And we're dealing with climate uncertainty. So, rain is not as predictable as it used to be. And then when there are storm surges, it tends to carry a lot of pollution out into our waterways. So if we catch rain, that diverts some of the water during those surges. So there's less water rushing out into the street, picking up, fertilizers and pesticides as it passes over the garden, and then all kinds of car fluids and stuff in the street. And if you have a combined sewer system, the storm drain goes into the sewer system and it overwhelms the treatment plants when there's a big rain, and all that sewage just goes out into the waterways. So those are 2 really good reasons to catch some rain. Another one is that, a lot of us are conscious about our carbon footprint and wanting to reduce it. And we need to remember that our municipal water has a lot of embodied energy in it because it's been pumped to a treatment plant and then pumped to our house. And, in California, some of it's been pumped over mountains just to us. So if we use rainwater instead of municipal water, then that's water that's just fallen in place and it doesn't have that kind of embodied energy. The biggest reason for me for catching rainwater and using it is that, in California, we tend not to leave much water in our rivers because the cities want it and the farmers want it. And they always make such a fuss that the rivers get left out. And we need to remember that in California, salmon going upstream has been an incredibly critical element in the health of our ecosystems. That influx of sea minerals that they bring in their bodies as they go upstream to spawn way up into little tiny rivulets. And then the predators and the scavengers carry those minerals even further up into the forests and the mountains. Those minerals probably kept our forests healthy and kept our ecosystems healthy. And we've pretty much cut salmon off from having access. And we can see that our forests are burning, and who knows, but that there might be a relationship there. Plus which, a lot of indigenous people depend on salmon, and we depend on salmon because it's got the right kind of omegas, and everybody is recommended to eat a lot of salmon. So we need to protect water in the rivers so that the salmon can get upstream. that's my, pretty passionate about it. Okay, you'll be seeing a lot of Friedensreich Hundertwasser in this talk because I'm really excited about his work. He was ahead of his time in terms of being really all about sustainability and the relationship between human beings and nature. And this talk is about looking at ways artists can engage in creating climate solutions and promoting sustainability. We actually want to use words like restoration and regeneration instead of sustainability because we don't know if we want to sustain what we've already got or make it better. But he really had lots of fascinating ideas and visions for how humans should live in relationship to nature. And here he's inviting us to treat each raindrop as a kiss from heaven and to save the rain. So if we want to do that, first of all, we have to believe that there's enough rain to actually save. I couldn't believe people during the drought saying, well, we don't get any rain anyway, why bother? But a 1,000 square foot house can actually capture 600 gallons of rain every time we get 1 inch of rain. And in California, in this area of California, we normally used to get 20 inches every year, which would mean on a 1,000 square foot house, which is not very big, we could capture 12,000 gallons. So that is not an insignificant amount of water. It's actually more than probably most of us have room to store. Oh, and I just want to say, it's calculated the footprint, the square footage of the footprint of the building. So it doesn't matter if there's lots of different levels of the roof, it's just the square footage on the ground of the footprint. So how do we catch rain? Well, it's really incredibly logical. We get the water off of the catchment surface and we bring it to a storage vessel of some kind. Usually the inlet is at the top where the rainwater comes in. The outlet will be near the bottom. That's where you capture the rain that you've stored to be able to use it in whatever way you choose. And then because we'll probably actually get more rain than you think, and then the tank can hold, you need an overflow, which will carry the water somewhere else, ideally to some beneficial use. So that's the mantra for setting up your storage: inlet, outlet, and overflow. It's really interesting. Oakland had those huge fires in the early 90s, and people rebuilt giant houses and put hardscape all around their houses because they were so terrified of having foliage or plants that could burn. So they overwhelmed the rainwater running off of those areas up in the hills, overwhelmed the stormwater system. And it would have cost a fortune to upgrade that infrastructure. So instead, Oakland basically gave away 400,000 gallons of rainwater harvesting systems. The idea being that people would catch the rain when there's a storm surge and then release that water slowly in between rain events. And then when another rain came along, there would be space in the storage to receive new rain. And that way it would lessen the pressure on the storm drains. So here, this is a wonderful graphic showing you the basic elements of a rainwater system. You have the catchment surface, which often is a roof on a building. Then you have the conveyance, which brings the water from the catchment surface into the storage through the inlet. Then you have the outlet that we talked about, and then you have the overflow. And I love that they showed the overflow going to a rain garden here, because that's exactly the idea, is that you want to direct that overflow where you can benefit from the rainwater again before it ever flows off your property. So two main types of systems. This one is called the dry system. What that means is that the rain flows directly into storage. It's not staying in the pipe that's conveying it. Typically, the storage in this kind of system is close to the catchment surface, and no water remains in the piping. So you see here the water going directly into the barrel. And when the barrel is full, it keeps flowing down into the storm drain. A wet system, on the other hand, means that storage can be far from the catchment surface. Basically, the wet system creates a trap because the water from the catchment surface goes underground, and then the piping comes up again and goes into the storage. And the reason this works without a pump is because water seeks its own level. So it's just like the trap under your kitchen sink in your house. Water goes down and it comes back up again, seeking its own level. And so as long as the point where it starts underneath the gutter is higher than where it goes into the tank, this system will work. Here's an example. The client didn't want a pipe going overhead from the tank over to the wall. And so we did a wet system where it comes down underground and goes up into the tank. And that light turquoise color is showing you where the pipe would be filled with water all the time, except for we put a drain at the bottom to drain it out. He was very worried whether this would actually work, but it worked fastly because physics. Water just seeks its own level. Here's another system where you can appreciate that the tanks are quite far from the building. There it's a line of IBC totes, they're called, linked together. And that water just travels all by itself over there and fills up those tanks. All right, now we're going to look at how artists actually play with catchment surface. Later, we'll look at conveyance and storage, overflow, and stormwater. So catchment surface can be a roof. What's fun about this picture is usually water flows off the roof to the outside. But in this case, it's on the roof center and it's being stored right in the middle of the building, which means that it will probably help keep the climate pretty consistent inside that building. Catchment surface can be a sculpture. It can be the ground. Here you see the water flowing in a channel into a sunken storage. The catchment surface can even be a fabric tent, like this one that was designed by Abir Sekali, specifically for refugees. She wanted to create out of a woven structure, a space that would help them weave their lives back together. So these structures collect rainwater and they store solar energy. And they even provide for a hot shower because those pockets on the outside, the water thermosiphons up to the top, being heated as it goes. And so people can have basic sanitation and take showers inside the tent. So catchment surface can pretty much be anything you can dream up. Tom David Architects participated in a contest to design a sustainable marketplace in Casablanca, and this is what they came up with. It creates shade and it captures rainwater that can be used in the marketplace. And here's a little rainwater catchment device that we created for Big Daddy's Complete Rejuvenating Community Garden in Emeryville. It's called Rainflower, and it directs water into a 55-gallon drum. It's probably it's just the silver. That's one of Vicky Jo's sculptures behind it. The Rainflower is just the silver part, the galvanized metal. We calculate it's about 5 feet in diameter, but that little flower would probably fill 3 55-gallon drums in a normal year of rain here. So kind of riffing on that, dream re-entry, rainflower was only really useful in the wintertime. So how could I make it be useful in the summer too? So I created Rain Tree, which has a liner in it. It's convention banner recycled material. And during the summer, I take the liner off and put clothesline twine between the branches. And it works great for drying clothes. So in permaculture, we call this stacking functions. They say that everything you design should have at least a couple of beneficial purposes. So here's Laurie Chetwood's dream, Urban Oasis. It actually is like a flower. Those petals close up and then they open down as you see it. And it catches sun, wind, and rain. I think it was part of the flower show in London. Pretty dramatic piece. Here's in Collins Park, Antonio Terra, a couple of rivers kind of meet together. This was a structure that was designed to create shade and create a meeting area and just a wonderful kind of gathering place. And it also harvests rain. Grant Associates designed these remarkable structures for Gardens by the Bay in Singapore. They're basically man-made trees with solar panels, and they catch rainwater. And the idea is that they will have hanging gardens all over them, and they'll be used to display plants from around the world. And they're extremely huge. They're metal and concrete, like really, really, really enormous, as you'll see shortly. So here's time view. It's a schematic. The rain is captured and stored in a reservoir at the top, so in tanks underneath. And they call them super trees. They consider them to be the environmental engines that cool the greenhouses. There's a couple of really enormous greenhouses in this park. And so they do rainwater harvesting and storage. They are the air intake for those greenhouses. They provide cooling and exhaust and the solar energy. And each one of those trunks is planted with plants from a different part of the world. So each trunk of a tree has a different theme. So this is pretty spectacular, especially at night when they do a light show. And there's that walkway, 7-story, that can just revel in it all. So you can imagine is a tourist destination. And that's the way art that really demonstrates technology in a good way, like in this case, solar and rainwater harvesting. That's what art does. It really brings people to it. So here we are with Hunter Wasser again. And I love this drawing. He's doing a green roof here. Only his version of a green roof actually has trees growing on it. He says they're flat rooting trees. So he has a whole forest on the roof. And then the water, the rain, filters through the humus and the pumice as the mediums grow in, and it flows down into a lower apartment where there is a tree tenant. And the tree tenants don't pay any rent because why should they? They're doing their payment in ecosystem services. What a brilliant idea. So they're allowed to grow out of the window, and then they please everybody else. All the man tenants get to appreciate the greenery just outside their window. And it's kind of a really marvelous idea. And what does it look like? Well, it looks like this. This is the Hunter Wasser Museum in Vienna. And there's the trees poking out the windows and enjoying the view. Here's another one of his buildings. He often has these kind of tile strips, ribbons coming down the facade of the building. And he thinks of it as being water pouring off the roof. So in this case, it's that turquoise strip coming down and just flowing down. So I love that he's referencing water, always trying to remind people of the centrality of water in our lives and in the life of the world. Here's another building that he designed. And they say that there's more vegetation in and on this building than on the land before it was built. And that's not hard to believe. So all of his buildings are destination points. They're, tourist attractions. Again, as I said, when you really work with nature and demonstrate something inspiring, people respond. Here's a poster that he donated to promote reforestation of the Negev Desert. Among the trees, you are at home. That's why he's trying to put trees into all the apartment buildings he builds. So you can be among trees. And your tree duty is that wood shall grow on streets and roads. One must again be able to breathe woodland air in the cities. Yes, a man who definitely had his own ideas. So many dreams of how to capture rainwater, of surfaces that can collect rainwater. Generally, some version of a funnel, and more imaginings. There's no limit to what could be dreamt up for a surface to capture rain. So now we'll look at conveyance, which means, the way that rainwater moves from the catchment surface to storage. So this tends to be playful. It tends to be art that delights. So I say it's underscoring the fun in functional. So these are just a couple of silly, they don't actually, lead to storage particularly, but it's just sort of demonstrating the idea you can be real, moving rainwater around. And this is a really, again, a very famous tourist attraction because it's quite marvelous. It's called Singing Drain Pipes. And it's in the student district in Neustadt Kunsthof Passage. It's called the Art Courtyards. And it was an experiment by the tenants of the apartments who are students. And so each courtyard has a different theme. And so this one is about the singing drain pipes, done by Annette Paul, working with designers Christoph Rossner and Andre Temple. And here's some details. And apparently when it rains, it does indeed make music. So it would be pretty marvelous to have a recording to go along with this slideshow. So fun, I think, making things fun will maybe get people excited and make them want to try something themselves. That's what I hope. So here's Buster Simpson, who talks about poetic utility. And here he's got these, on the left, a black kind of hose thing bringing water into these metal structures, which are, this is not only conveyance, but this is also storage because those U's are acting like traps. And so this is like a self-watering system for those plants that are growing in those sculptures there. And then the water continues out the bottom and into the storm drain. So he's basically intervening and trapping some of the rainwater so that those plants can grow. And here's another view of some of the larger installations. Again, I think these are in Seattle. It's great because you wouldn't want to have to try to get up on those ladders, water those up high. Here's local here in Emeryville, again, in Big Daddy's complete rejuvenating community garden. Vicki Joel did a rainwater catchment tank with monarch butterfly theme. And of course, if you have butterflies, you need some caterpillars. So the caterpillar is crawling along the pipe, which conveys the rainwater from the roof of the tool shed into the storage. So it's pretty fun. I installed the tank and I insisted that there be a caterpillar. So I'm glad that there is. And then you have rain chains, this popular way of conveying rain from the roof or from the gutter and downspout to the ground or into your storage. And I love the one on the left has little solar lights in it. And on the right, this is really kind of like hard hats pouring down. And on the right here, this was actually a construction site nearby. I took this photograph of it. It's quite wonderful, I think. And on the left, there's rainwater coming down from a gutter and into a rain garden. And the fish are swimming up, as they are in this photo as well. Love the theme of, the absolute essential relationship between fish and water, which we in California need to remember, that we need to leave water in our rivers so that fish can live there. And I don't know if you've heard of flow forms, but in the anthroposophical community, flow forms were developed and they are believed to actually revitalize water. They talk about cosmic energy being restored into the water because in flowing through the flow form, the water pulses and it goes through, it makes figure eight forms as it flows in each one of those little basins. And so it's kind of describing a spiral figure eight and then flowing to the next one and doing it again as it flows down the flow forms. And there has been actually research done on water that flows through flow forms. And supposedly in bakeries where they use water treated that way, the bread lasts much longer and doesn't rot or mold. And in treatment plants, sewage treatment plants, it helps the whole process happen a lot faster with less energy. So they've actually researched the impact on water of these flow forms, of this kind of movement. Like water is very sensitive to movement. And so this sort of spiraling infinity movement really restores it to maximum vitality. Here's just a fun, playful, thing on the left there, conveying the rainwater from up above down into a vessel down below. And on the right, this is really, it's actually carrying, the sculpture is carrying water quite far from the downspout, or from the gutter downspout, all the way over to where it's falling into a little catchment. So done by Kevin Caron, who is a California artist. And this is another California artist in glass. And this is in front of a fire station. So it has a sort of, has a certain kind of gutsy masculine quality to it. And he called it Thornton Creek in honor of the fact that the community is trying to somehow reclaim their waterway, Thornton Creek, which has been completely enclosed in concrete. And so he's just honoring that creek in the hope that someday it can be made available for people to enjoy. And this, the water is conveyed into an underground cistern, and it waters the native plant garden that's next to it. And I just want to do a nod to the conveyance of old. Water wheels used to water from level to level. And so this is just kind of acknowledging that. I used to also work at, grinding grains for people to have flour. Okay, how do artists play with storage? This is probably what we usually think of when we think about rain, is that there's going to be some big ugly tanks. I talk about there being a dread of ugly. People imagine that it's going to involve something that'll be industrial looking. So frankly, that's where artists come in, to get people over that yuck response. So let's play Find the Tank. Okay, in the upper picture, where is the tank? And I assure you that it's a very large tank. And I'll give you a hint, you can follow the black pipe from the gutter because it leads to the tank. And down here on the left, you can see there's a hummingbird and a tuberosa, classic themes of the Southwest, because this is Brad Lancaster's backyard in Tucson. But you can see that it's very innocuous. This is not an offensive industrial looking rainwater system. Find the tank here. Here we are in Vicky Jo's garden again, and it's been surrounded with metal art done by Vicky Jo. This is what the tank looked like before she doctored it and did her magic. It's a 2,500 gallon tank. So that's a big presence, but it's kind of cute with those butterflies on it. Find the tank here. Again, it's just a matter of being determined to have rainwater catchment and determined as well to make active. So I believe that those are tanks inside those screens with the plants growing out of them. Okay, find the tank. Oops, nope, it's a turtle. And this is the way to start. Just start off with a barrel. Start small, start manageable. I mean, this is a pretty cute barrel, I think. Here's Mary Bayard White. These weren't designed to be rainwater catchment, but they certainly would catch rain, and the birds would certainly enjoy them. So we're considering them storage for birds. If we had more rain here, they would definitely have water for the birds all the time. And this is storage for plants. So you can see we talked about the traps before. So these musical instruments would be trapping water down in the U at the bottom and supporting plants growing in them. So pretty cute window treatment. And as we said before, a tank is like a blackboard. It's an educational opportunity. Here, these are in Spanish, but the one's been as an opportunity to teach about photosynthesis, and the one below is about a double vault composting toilet. So what better use for a smooth surface that you can actually paint letters and images on. And then to the left, I think that's sort of generally about weather systems and the Southwest. So it's a cultural opportunity too. Here we have Native American themes painted on these tanks. It certainly fits with the landscape there. And it's opportunity for group mischief. Like, what more fun could there be than just getting a bunch of paint and playing with a group of friends? Which is kind of what happened here. These folks have a kitchen window that faces the top of the garden where these tanks are located. That's what they look like when they started out to the left. And then they turned the grandpa and the kids loose on them. And this is what they look like now. So the parents, when they're standing at the kitchen sink, are looking out at these tanks that are at the top of the garden and gravity feed the water down into the garden. This was, by the way, a wet system, if you remember, so they're quite far from the house, but the water was able to travel all the way up the hill to them. And they say that water holds memory. And so for this family, these water tanks hold the memory of the elder and the children playing together. Speaking of elders, Lauren Elder got herself an IBC tote. They are, in fact, quite industrial looking, not too cute. And they are also translucent, which means that algae tends to grow inside the tank because there's light being admitted into it. So she had someone sew some covers for these tanks with recycled convention banners. In Moscone Center in San Francisco, there's endless conventions generating endless banners, which generally go to the dump. So this was definitely a sustainable solution. And Art Ludwig made his own tent out of ferro cement. It's a technique usually used for building boats. So it definitely creates a waterproof, wall. Creates very thin walls. It uses chicken wire and hardware cloth and rebar and lots of cements. And you can see that this is really quite a lovely shape, I think. And the wonderful thing, we talked about functions. When this tank has, all the water has been used at the end of the summer, the family goes inside for concerts because the acoustics are great. So you just never know how things can serve more than one purpose. Okay, here we are in Seattle. Here's Buster Simpson, big public artist up in that area. And this is called Beckoning Cistern. It was kind of, apparently he was thinking about Michelangelo's, the hand that's reaching up and the hand of God coming down. And so here's the rain coming down into the finger, into the stern. And we'll talk more in a minute, but you can see in the left that the water overflows at the top of the cistern and dribbles down a series of, looks like there's cement bowls there. So now we'll talk about overflow. We started to already, but more. I don't know, I couldn't find who actually made this, but I'm so enchanted by what it is that I'm including it in the slideshow. It's in Seattle. And basically it's tipped so it does overflow and the water flows down a little channel there. And I'm not sure where it goes after that. But that is an example of the overflow being part of the piece. And here we are with the beckoning cistern again showing you how that overflow comes out. There's a green kind of like protruding piece of half pipe, and it just falls off and then just keeps flowing. It turns out it flows all the way down Vine Street. See, SVR designed this whole landscaping based on that rainwater traveling all the way down the side of the sidewalk with all these plantings all the way down the street. So that is really a big, this is really a dramatic impact on the street, and both for the landscaping and the sculpture. Here's Hunterwasser again, and I'm quite sure that that face up there is drooling down onto that rock. It certainly looks like it might be. So I'm assuming that that is water from above. Probably there's something growing up there and it's being filtered through some kind of medium and it's coming out and falling down there. So that could be considered an overflow too. So how do artists play with stormwater? Now we get into serious public art. Project Butler collaborated with Buster's. It's in Deckham, Oregon. It's called the Deconstruction Bike Corral. So it was all about creating a place where bikes could be locked up and protected a little bit from rain. And so you can see the water comes in that silver pipe from the building, from the roof, comes over, and there are these oil barrels cut in half with plants growing in them, and another oil barrel down in the foreground where the water eventually falls into it, and into this sort of planting strip. There's a curb cut, and the water from the street goes into that planting strip as well. There you see the oil barrel that the overflow is dripping down into. So the idea was that this is using up 2 parking spaces, so automobiles can't use them. Instead, bikes are using them. And the oil barrels, in the right-hand picture up above, the oil barrels are labeled with the names of depleted oil fields. So this is all about how we should be using bicycles instead of driving cars. It's really a consciousness-raising effort, which much of what artists do is about, as we say with weed. It's about really trying to influence behavior and consciousness. So in the lower picture, you can see it's quite complex. The water comes from the right, and then the barrels don't actually get water from the roof. They just get water directly from the sky, but they overflow into that same little gutter that the pipe from the roof goes into. And then all of that drains into the gutter it left and goes down to that blue barrel in the planting area. So this is the signage that was connected with that, and I'm just showing it, not because you can read it, but just to say that, public art tends to be about educating people, that, wanting people to be conscious of stormwater, and how do you prevent stormwater from becoming a pollutant, as we talked about in the beginning. How do we prevent it from picking up all kinds of chemicals and carrying that into our waterways? So this is just an attractive example of the kind of signage that often goes along with public art. Speaking of that, here's Jackie Bruckner's project in San Jose. Again, acknowledging stormwater as a resource rather than as a waste issue. She called it Urban Rain. This is the Roosevelt Community Center, another public art project. And she's referencing Coyote Creek by actually tracing the creek. In the left, those little lines are tracing the watershed of the creek, just to remind people that the water that's coming off of this building is part of the watershed, and it is going to eventually end up in the creek. And so that little tiny box on the wall there at the left is feeding into the filter, which is the golden tower there. And it's got stones in it which harbor microbes, which clean the water as it flows through it, and then goes into sort of a little wetland at the bottom in that raised bed. It's all about sort of helping people think about how stormwater is naturally cleaned in the environment by the soil and by plants before it flows into our waterways, and how we as human beings have to be careful about letting stormwater into our waterways. Here's side of this is other piece of this project for those chutes coming down the roof, bringing the water into this bowl that again has rocks in it that will filter the rainwater. And it has what she calls a thumbprint on the top, which is literally showing the tracings of the veins in a fingertip, and kind of referencing also the spirals that are omnipresent in nature, out in the galaxies and in the universe, and in many things here on Earth. It's the importance of the spiral form. So this is a project. This is one of the last projects she did before she passed away in 2015. Stacy Levy considers herself an environmental artist. This project was called Rain Ravine at the Frick Environmental Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I guess this was a living building challenge building, which is a very, very high standard for creating buildings that literally are super low impact, that just model the very highest levels of regeneration and restoration above and beyond sustainability. And so it says a collaboration between rainfall and the built environment. It fulfills one of the petals of the Living Building Challenge. So she basically used all these sandstones to kind of relate the building to the landscape in the area, in the valley where this was built. And so the water is very much a part of the building, just reminding people, how much water flows off of a building, and how we have to be really mindful about what happens to that water on its way into our waterways. Here's Ned Kahn. He's a Sonoma County, does amazing work all over. He collaborated with architect Moishe, I don't know how to say, Safdie, and created this rain oculus. This is back at Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, where those super trees were, right in that area. And this is the whirlpool that's formed in the rainwater collection vessel that's up on top of the building. There's another view of it in the upper left corner, and there's folks looking at the oculus from the top. It serves as both a skylight and the rainwater catchment vessel, and in the water it makes this whirlpool, and then it flows down 2 stories, if you can imagine that, into this pool inside this shopping center. So and then the rainwater is recycled back up to the whirlpool, and it also flows through a canal that runs through the atrium. So we can see that Singapore is definitely into spectacular public art that is also functional. So this took a tremendous amount of engineering, because you can just imagine how much that water weighs. And here, this was Jill Anholt's project called Light Showers. This is at a place called Sherbourne Common in Toronto. This used to be an industrial brownfield, really desolate, wasteland. And they decided to create a park and create a stormwater treatment facility as part of the park, and to make it beautiful, with the belief that by investing in public facilities like this, public infrastructure, then development will occur. So housing will soon be built in the area, and then that housing, the stormwater from those will be treated in the stormwater treatment facility. And this wonderful park will be right near the people who will move into that new housing. So this is all about restoring and regenerating wasteland, wasted out brownfields. And this is, to my pretty darn strict, 3 9-meter high art sculptures with beautiful lighting at night. Oops, sorry, went the wrong way. Yeah, so, during the day, it's still pretty beautiful with the water flowing. And so the water goes through, it looks like a wetland there with all the reeds in it, and then it flows into this canal. So the whole thing is really very elegant and just creating a desirable location for people to want to live in the area. And PFS Studios did the engineering on some of it. So all of these really dramatic, huge projects, of course, are done in collaboration with all sorts of other professionals, architects and engineers, etc. Okay, so the message is treasure the water. It really is a blessing. And if you had to carry it, like those kids down there do, if you had to carry it, you would treasure it. You would treasure it. All right, now it's up to you. Go out and play. Ripple forth with your own creativity. That's our website down below, weedartist.org. We have a directory of artists doing all this kind of work. And then harvestingrainwater.com, that's Brad Lancaster. He's like Mr. Rainwater in the Southwest. Has wonderful books. And we had pictures of his backyard with the tuberosa and a hidden tank there. So that's my webinar. And I'm so very happy to have put it together and so very happy to have shared it with you. And now I believe it might be time for, so I'm my screen sharing. And
great. Thank you so much, Christina. That was fabulous. Yay. Let's give it up for Christina.
Oh, we have people here. Oh my goodness. Thank you people for being here.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. So does anyone have any questions? You can go ahead and type your questions in the chat box or raise your hand.
Hello?
Someone.
Hey, teamwork.
Oh, Donna, go ahead. Why don't you do you have a question?
10 minutes and I'll call you right back. Okay.
Let me mute Andre. Donna, go ahead. Yeah, if you have a question.
I can't see myself, so I don't know if you're talking to me.
I am, yes.
Okay, thank you. Christina, I wanted to ask you if you considered sharing this fabulous, stunningly beautiful presentation with Chris Gramp so he could share it with his forum on Tuesday afternoons, because I'm sure he would just be so thrilled to share it with all the people in his class all the time. He does it every Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, sure. Yep. I've taken classes from Chris, so.
Great. Yeah. Do you need me to send you a link to him?
I think I still have his email, and he lives right in my neighborhood too. So.
Great, tremendous. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Excellent.
Looks like we have a question in the chat box. It says, this is from Kelly. Christina, have you made a waveform?
A waveform. Are they talking about a flow form? I'm not sure what a waveform.
Yes. Yeah, Kelly said yes.
Oh. Have I made one? I have imagined making one. I have actually witnessed Nick Bertulis. He has a form and he poured into it and actually made one. I have not personally succeeded in making one yet.
Very cool.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Manoush.
Do we have to clean inside the tanks? 'Cause the ones that you showed, that was like boat, you mentioned that they use a system that is water resistance. So when you have these tanks, how do you clean them? Do you need to clean inside?
That's a good question. I think a lot depends on the scale and what the use of the water is going to be. It's my understanding that what happens inside a tank is that a biofilm develops on the inner surface of the tank, and that's actually a good thing. And so I think if you were going to be using the rainwater for drinking water, you would probably want to filter it. which is a little off topic, but a friend of mine just told me that he just drank some rainwater from his tank the other day and said it was delicious. But so cleaning it, some tanks, Crystal, Manoush, like the one at Vicky Jo's garden with the monarch butterflies on it, the larger ones generally have a manhole that you can actually get inside and go down in and clean. So generally a really large tank is large enough that it can accommodate a hole that's big enough for a human being to crawl into. So yeah, you can clean them. But with barrels, usually you have a lid that you can take off and you can clean it that way too. So.
Yeah. My question is like, do you have to clean it? Because you talked about algae and stuff.
Oh, well, the algae was specific to Lauren's tanks, which are the IBC toads, which are translucent. So the sunlight tends to encourage algae growth. But I don't know if she's ever actually cleaned hers. So, but that's the whole point of covering it. Then the sun doesn't get through and it doesn't actually cause algae growth.
So there is no lifetime for such a thing.
Lifetime, like a limit to, I don't know. I've only been doing rainwater for the last 12 years, so I haven't experienced tank failures. Most of the tanks that people use is kind of at the scale that I'm involved are polyethylene. So I think they're fairly durable.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Who is that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Andre. Okay, Andre, and then there's someone, and then Lynn Elizabeth.
Okay, I'll make it quick.
That's
First,
okay.
Christina, I've seen your lecture probably 25 times. And every time you show it, there's so many more new things. And this one was so wonderful. I am going to make sure all my students get to see it. But I also want to tell everyone else that years ago, Christina put in my gray water system and changed out my tanks and toilets. And before I knew her, I have a house of 5 people. And my usage every month was 45,000 gallons, which was normal. But after we put in this gray water system, all new toilets and a new washing machine, it went down to 8. And now it goes up to 12 or 14, but never 45,000 again. So why aren't we all doing this?
Exactly. The fish need the water.
Yeah.
The fish, thank you, Andre.
Wow, that's great. Thanks for sharing that, Andre. And Lynn Elizabeth, do you have a question?
I actually was doing the applause instead of raising my hand, but while I have the chance, I'm going to tell Christina what a thrill it is to see all these artists work with water from around the world. It was truly inspiring, and I'm so happy that this program has been recorded so that I can share it with many other people that who I know would love to see it. So thank you.
And I would like to put in a plug for my dear friend here, Lynn, who has an amazing publishing company called New Village Press, which is the epitome of regeneration and restoration. That really is all about community building and how do we really create a culture with heart.
Thank you. And I'll put a plug in for a book that we have coming out in 2022 about eco arts in action. So a lot of more than 61 eco artists will be talking about what they teach, how they teach, their methodology, and much more. Anyway, thank you so much, Christina.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah, it is exciting.
Great, thank you. And it looks like in the chat box, BCB said, how do we get our communities to do more of this beautiful and functional art? And B also said, Berkeley has T1 funds for infrastructure for storm drainage. Would love to see a proposal for projects. So the question was, how can we get more people to make this beautiful functional art? What do you think, Christina?
I think we need to show this slideshow everywhere. I think, it's like they say in permaculture, you just have to make it look like more fun doing stuff the way we do it. You know, it's like if you just make it look like fun and beautiful and whimsical, then people are going to want to jump on board. And you just have to let them know that this option is out there and that they can participate and join in.
Great. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to jump in.
I'm so happy to see all my friends here.
I see.
People with questions, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and jump in.
I
Catherine?
don't have a question, but I just have a comment. I've known Christina for more than 40 years, I think. She's always been an inspiration. She's always ahead of the game. I have learned so much from her, and I am so incredibly amazed by not only her work, but also your work, Christina, but also the work that's being done in so many places. It makes me want to grab some teenagers who can draw, because I have zero artistic ability, or can paint, and put up a barrel and, you know, have them paint it and so forth. I live in Pacific Grove, and we are kind of between the rain areas, so we tend to get. We haven't had I think we've had like a millionth of an inch of rain so far this season. So I was thinking, like, if I had to do something like that, I mean, I'd have to have a funnel that is as big as the entire roof of my house, which isn't that big, but it's big enough, because you know, water is such an issue here, and my town has been struggling with it. But it's obvious that it's really pretty simple. We just all do it. Right,
Ask me to help.
Huh?
Ask me to help.
I would. You came down and spoke to Sustainable Monterey, I think, not Sustainable PG. Yeah, well, post-COVID, when we can meet again, definitely. Yeah, because there's water issues going on right now, I think.
So, Kath, what is your annual rainfall in Pacific Grove?
You know, I don't know what the average is. We've been in such a drought. I mean, I think we've gotten maybe an eighth of an inch so far in this season. Yeah, you know, that one little storm. Oh, maybe it rained for 15 minutes.
We haven't gotten a whole lot here either. So
no, I know. But we got lots of fog. So, you know. But I did some reading about fog catchers, and it seems like they're not real effective, and you have to have a big area. Because I thought that I have, but not so much water. But anyway,
Let me tell a little story about water in the atmosphere.
I also want to be mindful of time. We're at 6:01.
Okay.
And so maybe you can share, and then we'll take one more question, and then our event, it will be over.
Well, maybe it's off topic, maybe not. I just learned that in India, in a certain part of India, where this man that I study with, who's an amazing climatologist and soil microbiologist, he gave some lectures in 2018 and inspired a bunch of farmers to try doing things differently. And at least something like 200,000 tried his system of planting before the monsoons. And you basically seed coat the seeds with dung and some other material. And what happens is that they're able to actually get these plants to grow before the monsoon even starts. And then when the monsoons come, they can plant their main crop, and then they plant another crop afterwards. So these farmers who were desperate, and many of them committing suicide or going to the cities, now are able to grow 3 crops a year, double their income, and they're keeping the soil covered with plants year round, so that there's not a lot of heat re-radiating off of bare soil, which contributes to the increase in temperature of the earth. And his whole thing is that if we just cover more of the earth with plants all the time, that those plants transpire moisture, and that cools the climate. And if we can just get plants growing everywhere all the time, we can heal climate chaos. And so this was sort of proof of concept. 2 years later, they've collected all this data, and the land is staying covered with plants. It's becoming more fertile. You know, the food is much more nutritious because there's microorganisms growing in the soil, bringing all the nutrients to the plant's roots. So it's incredibly exciting. And it's all about, moisture in the air and just general moisture. It doesn't always have to be just rain. So I don't know if that was a coherent sharing, but did that
This
make
was
sense?
the Kiss My Soil concept of taking care of the land, huh? Have you seen that movie?
Kiss the Ground.
Kiss the Ground, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
If anybody hasn't seen that movie, it's a really excellent movie, the Kiss the Ground movie.
Great. And I think Eric Olson, one of you guys have a question? Yeah, go ahead if you want to unmute.
Oh, thank you so much, Christina. So good to see you and everyone. I'm Elizabeth. I'm here with Eric, my husband. Well, based in San Jose, we do some rainwater catchment, rain gardens, and gray water systems. And I got the training from Christina. And I wanted to ask you, right now we're working on a project in Milpitas for this African American family. And of course, gray water, the laundry to landscape, and a bunch of other things, a native garden and all that we've designed. And she was asking me, in fact, on Friday, before I saw this, that you were going to be doing this, before I got your email, she says, Elizabeth, I would like to do a little bit of a rain catchment, collection from these downspout. But I would like some art, something fun, so for my grandkids. And so I wanted to put you on the spot and ask if you would be interested in collaborating on something like that, like this week.
Well, this week?
This week.
Sure.
Starting tomorrow.
Sounds irresistible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. She's very interested and willing to.
So Elizabeth has a cooperative in San Jose, right? Is it San Jose? Yeah. Building gardens, food gardens for people primarily, right? Or doing landscaping for people. Yeah. But a lot of it's focused on edibles.
Yeah. So we started in our home with, we have 2 barrels, 530 gallons each. And, we just recently, my husband says we need to clean up the roof to make sure that dirt doesn't go into the barrels because of all the ashes, the fire. So we did that recently and flushed that out. Right. And of course we have our driveway, and all the water from the roof of our building, goes into the gardens and stuff. And, our water from the, laundry, we have a bunch of fruit trees. So yeah, it's really amazing. And a lot of people are interested in this kind of work. And there's just more awareness about it, and people are asking, I want a rain catchment system and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. So it's happening. So whoever asked that question of how do we get it, just little by little, it's just, just doing it and demonstrating it and talking about it, and yeah. Great.
So I'll email you about this project.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you. And would you be able to share that slide show with if just for inspiration, or how?
We're going to post it on our WEED website is the plan, right?
Okay.
Yeah. We want our art and activism series to be archived on the website, so
it'll be on our YouTube channel that we're creating.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to email Christina or email us at info@weedartist.org. I saw Kate put this really great message in the chat box that said, Christina, what a wealth of information. Thank you so much for kicking off this series. This was a wonderful first episode of our art and activism. And please let us know if you know any artists that would like to give presentations as part of this series. Thank you so much. Have a really good night, and great job, Christina.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming.